All Indiana Politics is your premier source for Indiana politics, focusing on issues that matter to you.
I still want us to be the best in the Midwest.
We can't afford another lockdown.
Give the citizens of this country the relief they need.
Education in the state of Indiana remains priority number one.
In-depth, nonpartisan coverage.
We don't know exactly where the economy will be in January.
People are worried with good reason.
Exclusive interviews with Indiana's political leaders.
We have the resources here in the state of Indiana to care for those who are in need.
Expert analysis on critical legislation.
We need to reform those laws.
This recovery is going to take some time.
We've got to anticipate that there'll be a budget shortfall.
From Wish TV, this is All Indiana Politics Podcast on the All Indiana Podcast Network.
I'm Wish TV government reporter Garrett Bergquist. Congressman Greg Pence in January announced he will not seek another term. That set off a stampede of Republican candidates looking to succeed him. Pence's district covers east central Indiana from the southern part of Indianapolis to Richmond. Today we hear from one of the candidates in the May primary, Jeff Raatz. He has represented the Richmond area in the state Senate for the past 10 years. Let's bring in congressional candidate Jeff Raatz. Jeff, thanks for coming by today.
My pleasure, Garrett.
So tell us a little bit about yourself. You currently serve in the state Senate. Why did you decide to run for Congress?
So I've been in the General Assembly or in the Senate for 10 years, and ultimately the decision came down to do I want to stay in Indiana where we get things done or go to a place of what I would categorize as chaos in a lot of respects. Ultimately, the decision came that if people don't go there for the right reasons, then Indiana will suffer, and every state in the union will suffer if we continue the current behavior, whether it's divisive politics or some of the policies that are being implemented and have been implemented, and we're playing them out as we speak today. So ultimately that was the decision point. Indiana is a great place. I think we've done a great job in the Indiana General Assembly making sure that we have a balanced budget and have done a lot of good things. I'm sure there are pundits out there that would disagree with me, but Indiana in a lot of respects has become maybe not the destination state we'd like to see yet for economic development, because that's the trigger, in my opinion, that helps everybody get a leg up in their life. And so, but we're on the move. We're certainly not behind. We're being looked at as the #1 state in the nation to create a new business. And then we want to be a destination state as well. So I'm proud to have participated in the process to get us where we are today.
So right now, immigration and border security are pretty much the top issues this election cycle. On your website, you say that you want to close the border to illegal immigration. How would you do that in practice?
Well, the first thing, it's going to take the ability for the presidency to come alongside Congress, and because of the executive orders that got us where we are today. And if we could pass legislation, if legislation could be passed, which is a secondary part of this, in a perfect world, the president would lock down and say we're going to close the border. I think it's the #1 issue in our nation for security purposes, for the issue of illegal drugs coming across the border, and so it's somewhat of a replay. But if we go back about 3.5 years, our border was in much better shape than it is today. And if we remember, there were conversation about, well, it got out that we're going to do X, and there'd be a flood of people come across in preparation for we were going to do the next step, which is put up a wall or whatever those steps were. And so the news cycle runs farther than the borders of the United States of America. That was proven there. But we got some serious issues, an incredible amount of people, more than we at least have recorded, as many or more than the population of Indiana. So we're somewhere in the 7 million person range. And the question is, why are we doing it? And why are we allowing the drugs and untold? We don't know necessarily who's come across the border. Are they terrorists? Are they ISIS? Are we headed for an issue that just happened this past weekend in Russia with the killing of 120 or so people in a auditorium? We don't know those things, and so this is serious business.
What about the people who are already here who are undocumented? What do we do about them?
Well, that's a complicated problem as well. I think at a minimum we begin and try to find these folks and determine if where they come from. First of all, what country did they land here from, and what's the propensity of them being a terrorist, or if it's drugs, whatever it is, that we take care of where we're at and honestly categorically begin to remove them from the United States of America.
Is it practical to deport that many people, though?
I'm talking about a segmented portion of them. As I mentioned, if there are people here that are tied to known terrorist organizations, we either house them and pay for them to be here, or we send them back where they came from. And so that's the question we have to ask ourselves. It's a monumental task, regardless of what we do, right? So if we, as you're speaking, from a practical matter, if we identify them, are we going to house them here in the United States, or are we going to send them back where they came from? And those are the questions we have to ask ourselves. My opinion is that if they're dangerous, they need to go back where they came from.
There's a lot of focus on building the wall, at least from the Republican side of the aisle, but what about all the drugs that are coming in through the border checkpoints? Because most of the drugs that the DEA and other agencies say they can account for are coming in through the checkpoints, not over land at all.
100% agree with that comment. So we have technology available to us. We can shut the border down completely and dissect every automobile and every individual that comes across the border, and we should. Because of the necessity or the nature of fentanyl coming across and people dying every day, multiple people. No one has not been affected by someone they've known or a family member because of this. It's escalated in the past several years, and so we can control that, and we should. So the concept, actually, in my opinion, ultimately to fix this thing is meaningful immigration reform needs to go through the proper process, which would be Congress, and then have a president that'll sign it, and we secure a border and move forward. We make the decisions necessary to make sure that we are a nation that doesn't allow a complete open border. So that's my answer, and there are a lot of nuances in there that have to be determined, just as you mentioned about deporting certain people.
So the state Senate took the lead on Indiana's abortion ban. Would you support a nationwide abortion ban if you were in Congress?
I'm a man of faith first, and a husband and a father, and believe in the traditional family. And my answer is yes. If that came up, I would certainly support it. I think, Indiana, we went through a lot of discussion about this issue, but the sanctity of life is important to me.
What would that look like? What would be the ideal solution in your mind? I suppose if a bill came up, it's going to be an elongated process. Let me start, and that's where my mind's going when I say this. The process to get something like that to the table and to get enough people to agree on it to move forward is a long process. And so the question is, would I support some type of agreement between the sides in order to get something done? The answer is yes, and here's my explanation. So prior to Senate Bill 2, I believe it was, in 2022, I think it was Senate Bill 2. I think it was 1, actually.
Is it 1? Okay. Senate Bill 1 in a special session. I'm thinking there was something else on the docket that year as well. But obviously it should have been Senate Bill 1. We look at where we're at and where we are today. At that time, we were aborting 700 plus babies a month in the state of Indiana. Now we're down to about 12. And so it's a massive difference. Now there could have been contributing factors that caused that
on a longitudinal graph to go up. Some could have been the Ohio residents may have been that live close to Indiana may have been coming over here simply because they had a bill in place should Roe versus Wade ever overturn that it was called the heartbeat bill, and so it laid there dormant. If it ever happened, it became law, and that's exactly what happened. And now they've changed that in Ohio, but so those numbers might be elevated some. That Indiana may have been a destination state for a short period of time, and that's why those numbers are high. But that's what we're talking about, the difference between 700 and let's say 15 in the state on a monthly basis. Significant, unfathomable number of babies being aborted.
Why not leave that up to the states, though? Because in a lot of states where abortion was actually put on the ballot, voters overwhelmingly have voted to expand or maintain access to abortion.
Sure. Well, I think ultimately, when you look at those numbers that I'm talking about, I don't know how anybody could put their head on a pillow at night knowing that they could have participated in a situation where it eliminated the possibility of thousands. If Indiana had 700 a month, we're talking thousands and thousands of babies annually, untold numbers. That's my answer. There's responsibility we have as citizenry to do, I think, a personal responsibility that's part of this equation, as is all of America, right? We have personal responsibility to follow the law. And my parallel is responsibility, personal responsibility in all these situations.
But why take that sense of personal responsibility and why take that individual choice away from someone?
Because I believe in, I'm pro-life and I can't delineate between one or the other.
So there's been a bit of a rift in the Republican Party over aid to Ukraine and to international alliances and relations more broadly. Where do you fall on that?
Well, there's some conversation, and the Ukraine was looked at to be part of NATO several years back, and it doesn't appear that it ever happened. I don't believe, but nonetheless, there were some agreements made, and so does the United States, as a NATO participant, do we have some kind of a requirement to participate over there? That's the first question that we have to ask ourselves. And the second thing is it wise to send billions of dollars over there, or is it wise, if we do have an obligation, do we send artillery over there instead of sending money over there? Those are the questions we have to ask ourselves. And ultimately, beginning and end of the day, if Russia plows through, takes out the Ukraine, and that becomes part of Russia, what's beyond that? What's the next endeavor for Russia? Those are things that I, from a foreign landscape, I don't understand some of those things. And so unless a person, what I'm ultimately saying is unless a person get on the inside and see what those ramifications are, would it change our viewpoint on how we're doing what we're doing? There's enough chaos on this globe right now that, think about Russia and ISIS. I don't ever remember a foreign organization having an internal terrorist attack in Russia. And so since 9/11, the United States, first in time ever, right, that we had something like that happen. This is not of the magnitude that happened in the United States, but nonetheless it raises eyebrows. There's a lot happening on the globe right now.
You've chaired the Senate Education Committee in the General Assembly for about the past 5 years or so. Obviously, right. The federal government plays a much different educational role than the state government does. What role would you potentially see yourself playing, if any, in education policy in the House?
Well, that's a great question. Ultimately, if it were up to me, I would try to eliminate some of what the federal government does when it comes to education, and proportionately pull back on some of that and allow the states to actually do what they do. I think we have one way that the United States as a nation could benefit what happens in D.C. is by eliminating some of those jobs, or if not, the whole Department of Education,
and allow the states to take the front lead and let them compete. And we've everything I've done in the as the chairman of the Education Committee in the Senate, working with the House and now the Department of Ed, is to do our very best to make sure that students have the capacity when they leave, the skill set, whether they're going into the workforce directly or if they're going on to higher ed, that they have the skill set and the academic wherewithal to be able to succeed. And not only we're struggling as Indiana, we're struggling as the United States of America in order to see results. And so ultimately, I'll say all that to say probably the biggest pushback I get about the things we've done in the Indiana General Assembly when it comes to education is we keep changing things. We have a system that's almost a century old. My transcripts from high school look identical, and they're 40 years old to what we produce today, and that was from Michigan. We're in Indiana, so we need to change some things. It's not change just for change purposes. We need to get kids the very best education they possibly can get, and a lot of that is academic, as on whether it's reading or mathematics. We've got to do a better job.
Do you potentially foresee a larger push on career or vocational technical-oriented education as well?
Sure, and that we've been working on that for about 3 years now with multiple organizations and taking some pretty big strides in that direction, whether it's quality work-based learning opportunities or what we would consider an apprenticeship, which would delineate between whether that's a union shop or a non-union shop. It really, the word apprenticeship is universal, whether it's a union shop or non-union shop. But a formal way of making sure that students have the skill set when they graduate from high school or maybe a year after that, coupled with potential certificates from higher ed, whether it's Ivy Tech or Vincennes University. I think even some of the other large campuses would participate maybe on a regional basis when we talk about IU or Purdue. We need to take a good hard look at what we're producing and how can we better suit students today. As I mentioned, culture's changed, and we have a golden opportunity here, and so I 100% support and spend hours almost every week on it, even when I'm out of session. Spend an hour and a half this week Friday on a Zoom call as we plan this thing out, because this is a massive endeavor in order to be successful at it.
What's one thing we haven't talked about that you believe is not getting enough attention in Washington right now?
Well, I'd say probably the next piece that is inflation and what we're doing about that, and the debt ceiling, and being now $34 trillion in debt, and watching this budget pass. I don't think it was midnight on Saturday. This past weekend, the Senate put their approval on it. The question is how we have been facing deficit spending for as long as I can remember. And now we're at $34 trillion in debt and just spent another $1 trillion. And I personally don't know if that's covered or if that will go to increase the debt ceiling or what portion of it will. That's something that we as a nation need to grapple with and do it in a very serious level. I think the biggest part of the problem is that we always seem to do these continuing resolutions, which we haven't had a budget for years, honestly, which is crazy. So we just say, oh, we're going to start where we left off and increase by X amount and keep going down the road. Well, that's not fiscal responsibility at all. The bottom line is what we should be starting today in Washington, D.C. is the budget process, so that the next time when we come to the end of this year, that we're prepared with a budget that's been vetted and worked with both, not in both chambers, I was going to say both parties as well. If we find some common ground where we do something that's long-lasting, or at least for a year, we don't end up in a crisis situation like we have for eons, it seems like. So we plan forward and make sure that what we're doing is right.
You've got a crowded field here. This is an open seat because current Congressman Greg Pence is retiring. What makes you the best choice for this job?
Well, I think That's another great question. I have a couple things I think that at least one thing that anybody running in this race doesn't have. So I got an incredible conservative record in the General Assembly, not unparalleled to anybody. There's one other person in the race, as we know, and that's Representative Speedy, that has a good, solid record as well. The concept of being totally transparent and the ability and the track record of standing up on the hard issues and carrying them across the finish line, knowing that most of the time I have a target on my back because of some of the things that we do. I mean, in education, this is no disrespect to anybody involved in this process, but I firmly believe that it's time to change, and that's what we've been doing incrementally in the General Assembly. And I like to say change is great as long as it's you and not me, right? Because we as human beings don't like change necessarily. We like to continue to move on the way we are. But the question we have to ask ourselves, are we producing results? And so that's the question we need to ask ourselves in Washington, D.C. when it comes to the budget process. One, very, very much so needs to be up front. And then how long are we going to continue to spend more than what we have? And we could talk about all kinds of things. We talk about, the concept of higher taxes. I don't want to raise taxes. I think we need to be responsible in Washington and get to a place where there's a balanced budget. I supported the balanced budget amendment to the Constitution in Indiana. So if we get to a point where the governor believes he or she has to spend more than what we have, then the General Assembly has to come back in and put their stamp of approval on it. So it's not just the executive branch that has that capacity to do. And so some of those things could happen as well. It's a serious problem in our nation. Inflation is not good. We can say that unemployment is as low as it's ever been, or at a good number. Can't necessarily disagree with that, but here's the question. The other side of that story is, what's the labor participation rate in the United States of America? Is it 60%? Has it gone down? We got homelessness that the likes I don't think anybody in Indiana has seen. I don't know about other states necessarily, but we are plagued with problems, and it's going to take some bold action in order to address them without blowing up the United States. That's bad terminology, but without creating chaos in the United States when it comes to taxation or services that people are accustomed to. So that's a balancing act that we played very well, in my opinion, in the state of Indiana, and those principles need to go to Washington, D.C. Having sat on the Appropriations Committee, I participated in these conversations, and as well as what's good, what isn't good, and even wanted more things myself, but didn't get there. So part of how the game's played. So that's my answer. The second thing is the economy, inflation, and how we move forward.
Jeff Raatz, thanks for joining us.
My pleasure. Thank you.
That was Jeff Raatz. He's running to succeed retiring Congressman Greg Pence in the May 7th primary. Remember, you can catch All Indiana Politics every Sunday morning at 9:30, only on Wish TV. I'm Garrett Bergquist. Thanks for listening.
From Wish TV, this is All Indiana Politics Podcast on the All Indiana Podcast Network. Watch All Indiana Politics live Sunday mornings at 9:30 on Wish TV and at wishtv.com. Subscribe to this podcast and listen weekly here on the All Indiana Podcast Network. And be sure to discover even more great podcasts at allindianapodcastnetwork.com.